Hi, this is Abul Hussain coming to you from London, the United Kingdom. And if you are watching this podcast outside of our Facebook group for social media marketing agencies, then do find the link and join in, or go to 𝗕𝗵𝗲𝗀mastermind.com. Now, this is going to be quite a special episode because I'm speaking to a Pinterest strategist. Now, I know a lot of people think about Pinterest and they don't think they can generate clients for their agency, for their coaching practice. But Jana Osofsky is doing exactly that. So Jana, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining me.
Sure.
There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be interested in Pinterest because it's one of those platforms that are probably untapped compared to Facebook or Instagram. So why don't you just give a bit of an introduction into who you are and you have become this Pinterest guru.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Jana, like you said, with 𝗕𝗲𝗁, and I got started in online business about 3.5, probably about 4 years ago, because I think I've been saying 3 years now for too long. So it's probably about 4 years. And one of my very first clients, when I first started doing, I was basically like a virtual assistant doing marketing types of work for people. One of my very first clients was an online course creator. She's also a coach and a branding strategist, psychology-based branding strategist. And I learned when I was working on some different marketing projects for her that her number one source of traffic to her website, leads, generation of leads for her business using her lead magnets, her number one source of new people on her email list was Pinterest. And at the time, I was definitely in the same kind of maybe mindset about Pinterest as some of your viewers who are new to it might be, thinking, oh, wow, Pinterest, how interesting is that? I mean, I think of Pinterest as a place where I go to kind of have like some me time and curate ideas. And a lot of those ideas at the time were, about home decor and recipes and things like that. So I dove more into this to find out what was going on with this thing. How is she generating all of this money and all of these business results with Pinterest marketing? And, just learned all about it and discovered it as a marketing platform. In the 4 years that have passed since then, it's become a little bit more well-known, I would say, but still, like you said, definitely kind of underutilized, a little bit untapped still, although it's gaining a lot of popularity now too among the people I work with, which is online coaches, course creators, and service providers. So I work with people now who are in those categories and are looking to put their audience growth on autopilot with Pinterest and get clients using the platform. So that's kind of brings us up to today. And I've done dozens and dozens of strategic setups in a done for you kind of capacity for coaches, course creators, service providers. And then about 1.5 years ago, I distilled all of my process and everything into a course. So I have a course called Pinterest with Purpose, which helps people who might not be able to work with me one-on-one, but want to set up Pinterest for lead generation so that they can use all the tactics and the strategies that I've learned that work for coaches, course creators, service providers in their business. So yeah, so that's kind of that's where I'm at. It brings me up to today.
Yeah, that sounds great. Now, I suppose let's go back to the basics. For those who are not entirely sure, because I'm not even 100% sure I know what Pinterest is. What is Pinterest? We know there's boards and we know you pin stuff, but what's the platform all about?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. One of the reasons why you may not be super familiar with Pinterest may be your gender, because typically people think of it mostly being women on the platform. Although it is still mostly women, but 40% of new signups in the last year have been men. So there are men starting to come on the platform. But yeah, a lot of people, both men and women, don't know a lot about what Pinterest is, and they think of it as like social media. Most people, when they think of it, the little bit that they do know about it, they think that it's probably kind of like Instagram because it's a lot of beautiful visuals. And the thing about it that is interesting or kind of surprising for a lot of people who are marketers is that it's nothing like Instagram. It's not social media, in fact, at all. It is a visibility platform, but it's not social media. It's actually a search engine. It's a search and discovery platform. And so if you are just an average user of Pinterest or the internet in general, it might help to know that Pinterest is a lot more like Google than it is like Facebook, or Instagram. And if you're a marketer, then you might want to, the one way to kind of shift your thought process on it is to realize that it's more like YouTube and more like Google than it would be like social media in terms of the approach that you take to actually market there and really be successful with a real strategy that actually makes you money on Pinterest. So from a very, very basic perspective, if you're on Google and you Google something that you're interested in learning more about or a question you have, up comes a list of entries, right? You know, you've got, I think it's like 11, is it, on the first page or something like that, of all of the different possibilities that you could click on to learn more about that thing. Google's like, okay, here's what you searched and here are the things we think that are going to help you answer your question or whatever, learn more about this thing you just searched. Pinterest is actually exactly like that, except that instead of seeing links and words, you see pictures and images, basically. And behind each one of those images, just like on Google, if you were to click on one of those entries, it would bring you to a link to another website. That's exactly the same on Pinterest. If you click on any of those pictures, you actually have to click twice. The first click is to open it and make it bigger so you can get a better look at it. And then if you click again, it'll bring you to a website. So there's a link behind each one of the images on Pinterest. And that really is the main reason why it's nothing like Instagram, because I don't know about you, but Instagram frustrates me because of exactly that like
can't click
there,
them.
you know, yeah, there's like this one place you can have a link on Instagram. So yeah, so that's basically the deal. And with the marketing strategy, if the people who are brand new to the idea is to stop the scroll with your Pinterest image, get people to pay attention, and incent them in some way to click through that image to get to your website. And that's really the main situation. Just like with Google. With Google, the goal is to, you know, get them to see your entry in on that first page, ideally, if you can land on that first page with your SEO, and get them to think, oh yeah, that's going to solve my problem. And I'm going to click on that, and that's going to bring me somewhere that's going to answer my question. Same concept.
I mean, you've touched on Google, so I'll stay there for a second, because one thing that I have found is when I'm doing some searches, I find Pinterest links in all search results. And then this kind of defies what most people would think about when it comes to SEO, because people think about blog posts and articles and long form content. But here you have like an image which is ranking quite high in the search. What's the sorcery behind that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting you say that. I have a client, a former client, who is a health coach. She specializes in working with people with one particular chronic illness in particular. It's Lyme disease. She specializes in working with men and women who are dealing with Lyme disease. And when we first started working with her Pinterest profile, it was really interesting to me. It was like probably about a year and a half ago that this happened. She sent me a message and said, oh my God, somebody just reached out to me and asked me, you know, if I work with people directly, if she wants to, you know, book a call with me, a discovery call, because she found my pin on Google. So this new client of hers Googled something very specific about Lyme disease. And I think I remember what it was, but I don't want to say it because I'm not a Lyme disease expert, so I might say it wrong. It's like a certain symptom, basically. And when she Googled that, in the first couple of entries, up came this coach's Pinterest pin. And it wasn't her blog post about that topic. It was the Pinterest pin. So this person who Googled this hit that Pinterest pin, came to her Pinterest pin on Pinterest. Sorry, I've said Pinterest like 18 times in one sentence. Clicked through the pin, and that's how she found her blog post. And her blog post had in the sidebar, you know, book a call with me type of situation. So yeah, so that happens a lot. And I don't know, I mean, like, I'm not a big believer in like, you know, you asked like what kind of, you know, sorcery is behind that. It's SEO, it's search engine optimization. On Pinterest, you use keywords. And so the idea with the keywords is that, you know, Google, and I'm not a Google SEO expert, but Google can see the keywords that you're using on your Pinterest pin description. So that's going to be one of the reasons that it's going to show up in a search like that. And Pinterest is driving 5% of all internet traffic now, like of all internet traffic, which is a lot for one platform. So because of that, Google sees it as, I don't want to say a credible source, but like you know, Google indexes it pretty highly typically because there's a lot going on there. And I know that, again, I'm not a Google SEO expert, but Google likes what, you know, sites that have a lot going on, that there are a lot of people visiting and revisiting and whatnot. Yeah. So for all those reasons, that's a great strategy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So coming back to this whole kind of on the platform itself. So someone initially creates a board, is it? And then they pin stuff to a board, or do they just randomly upload to their profile, or, you know, how does that work?
Yeah. So to set up a strategic Pinterest profile, you create your profile and then you add boards. And then to each board, you can add pins. So to answer your question, yes, you don't just pin pins to a profile, you pin them to your boards. And then what happens is those pins, based on the keywords that you've used, they show up in people's searches and in their smart feeds. So if I go on Pinterest one day and I just search like client onboarding, or I search for how to create a mood board, or I search, you know, fat burning smoothie recipes, or whatever it is that I'm going to search, up comes this feed, the search feed of all these different things that Pinterest is feeding to me based on what I just searched, and also based on, you know, it has a complex algorithm. So it's also based on what I've searched for in the past, what I've pinned to my boards in the past, that kind of thing. So although you, the marketer, pin the pin to the board, I don't really see the pin on the board unless I actually go looking for your board, which doesn't happen all that often. Where I see it is I see it in my feed. So I either see it in my smart feed when Pinterest says, hey, welcome back to Pinterest. Here's some things you're going to be interested in based on what you've searched for before. Or in my search when I go on and I search for something specific that I'd like to learn about.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And obviously on some social media profiles, you can follow someone, add them as a friend, you know, that kind. Is there something into building on Pinterest? Do you like a board or a person, or what options are there?
Yeah, you can follow a person, and you also, you're right, can follow individual boards. So if I have boards about one thing that you'd love to follow, but you don't want to follow my boards about this, you can just follow the ones that you want to follow. However, I will say that your like number of followers on Pinterest has traditionally not been very important. So whereas on Instagram, you know, your number of followers is a metric that most people like to look at to see if your account's growing. We might look a little bit at that metric on Pinterest, but we look a lot more closely at things like how many impressions your pins are getting in people's searches, how many saves you're getting to people's boards, and then the most important, which is clicks. So we don't really, the number of followers that you have isn't really very important on Pinterest. So yeah, and then you can follow other people if you want to, but as a marketer, your main goal really is to be using keywords and visuals in a way that's going to grab people's attention in their feeds.
So in terms of importance, you've got keywords, and you've obviously got the pinned post, the image that draws people into the post itself. What is more important to optimize for, the keyword, image, or, you know?
Yeah, that's hard for me. That would be very difficult to choose. I personally am very keyword focused. My approach to Pinterest and Pinterest marketing is very keyword focused. Sometimes I feel a little nerdy about it. I have to be careful in my own content because I feel like I talk about keywords so much that sometimes people's eyes roll back in their heads. They're like, oh, really? She's talking about keywords again? So I think that probably the answer is that they're equally important, because the keywords are what's going to get you discovered by the right people. And so not just by any people, but by the people who are already searching for and interested in the things that you teach about, the things that you create content about, the things that you offer in your free content and your paid offers. But the visuals are going to be the things that are going to grab their attention and get them to take that next step with you, which is going to be to click through or to save, mostly to click. So they work hand in hand. But I will say that I think that most people, the mistake that I see a lot of people, coaches, course creators, service providers, my kind of people, make when they approach Pinterest is that they focus more on the visuals at the expense of not really doing a lot of keyword research or deciding what keywords are like finding out what's being searched and coming up with a keyword strategy, and then consistently adding the keywords to all the right places on their profiles and their pins. So while I think they're both important and equally important, I would say that I think it's more because people tend to not focus on the keywords very much. I'd probably say focus on the keywords more, because people naturally are kind of focus on the visuals, I think, but the keywords, especially if you're used to social media marketing, don't feel as natural to focus on. Does that make sense? I'm kind of like,
that does make sense.
Okay.
And when you're using keywords, is it like hashtags that you're using, or they're like separate sections? There's a separate section for you to actually just put keywords in.
Yeah. So it's not hashtags, although you hashtags on Pinterest are kind of a funny thing, because you can use them on Pinterest, but they're not widely used. And I personally don't teach a lot about them. I know how they work, but I just don't think that they're as important. So the keywords that we're talking about on Pinterest are just regular keywords. They're just going to be like a keyword and a keyword phrase, which some people will call like a long tail keyword. So for instance, I worked recently with an online dating coach. And so online dating would be a keyword for her. Online dating profile, dating advice, things like that would be what we would call a keyword or a long tail keyword.
Awesome. So let's talk about some of the numbers and some of the results you've achieved, because obviously we've spoken at length about the platform and how it works, and hopefully people get a bit of an idea. 5% of all of the internet's traffic is coming from there. It's still relatively untapped. So, I mean, if you're looking for low-hanging fruit, I'm sure you'll find it there. But in terms of the volume of traffic it can drive and the volume of leads it can drive, what success have you had for your clients?
Sure, yeah. So I think generally speaking, so I have clients and I have students, because I have students who take my course as well. So I have success stories from kind of both of those buckets. And I get this question a lot from people, like, what kinds of results can I expect? And the responsible answer that I need to start with is that it really varies a lot based on your niche, how consistent you are, how much time you want to invest in the strategy of Pinterest. There's so many factors, and your domain authority plays into it, like how, in the same way that it does with Google SEO, like how credible, does Pinterest see your website? How long has your website been around? The content that you're creating. And then the other piece of it is that Pinterest gets you people, new eyes on your offers, but your offers themselves have to, obviously that there's going to be a huge variation between how well your offers convert, whether that's your paid offers or your free offers, things like that. So like if you have a landing page that's converting at, 85%, that's going to be a bigger success story with Pinterest marketing if you're sending traffic to it than a landing page that's converting at 20%, right? But that being said, I have clients who are getting, thousands and thousands of clicks to their website. So that's new eyes from Pinterest, interested people who've searched for their things, heading over to their website and seeing their offers and their content. Thousands of new people every month looking at their content. I have one client, a health coach, who's a hormone health specialist. She actually, in the first quarter of this year of 2020, she decided at the beginning that she was going to not spend the $75,000 that she had spent in quarter one of 2019 on Facebook ads and go all in on Pinterest, because she'd had a lot of success with it last year in 2019 after I set up her profile. So in the first quarter of 2020, she saved $75,000 because she didn't pay for Facebook ads at all during that quarter. And she brought in about 8,000 new subscribers to her email list and filled her group program entirely based on, mostly Pinterest traffic. Obviously, some of that's going to come from SEO, like Google SEO, and people who maybe already were on her email list. But she had 8,000 plus 8,700 and something new subscribers, and almost all of those came from Pinterest in quarter one. So those are some big success stories. But then I also have clients who, like I have actually that online dating coach, she has been actively on Pinterest now for about a year. I teach a very minimum viable strategy where you're very consistent, but you stick to just the basics and don't get distracted by a lot of Pinterest shiny objects, because I've found over the time that I've been doing this for coaches and course creators and service providers that, we're busy. We have other things going on. We're not full-time bloggers. So we need to fit Pinterest into our strategy. So for her, she's been active on the platform for about a year. And now she has her virtual assistant spending about 1 hour a week on Pinterest. That's it, doing all the Pinterest things. And they get about 1,200 hits per quarter. So about 400 new people, not necessarily new, but people landing on her website and her offers and her freebies and things like that from Pinterest. So like 400 new clicks per month coming over from Pinterest to her website. So that's not nearly as impressive as the stats that I just told you about the first client, that first success story. But for her, it works really well because her VA is spending 1 hour a week doing this.
Yeah.
And she's, you know, pretty well fully booked in her practice, but having those new people coming in all the time to her website and seeing her blog posts that she writes every couple of weeks, and, you know, some of those people download her freebies, get on her email list. Some of them come over and read a blog post and then book a call with her. So for her, that works really well. And even though she's only getting, if you will, 400 new visits to her website every month from Pinterest, that's still about 4 times as many visits that she gets from Facebook, as an example. And it's still her number one source of traffic to her website. So Pinterest is head and shoulders above all the other places that she brings in traffic from. So I think that, you know, the success stories have to be calibrated against or with what people are trying to accomplish with Pinterest and what their goals are. And I've had obviously success stories that fall anywhere in between, this is what's possible, and then this is just someone kind of humming along and letting it run in the background and being really happy with the results, but they're not like spectacular or whatever, right?
Yeah. And I suppose
Yeah.
if you have a high ticket product or service or program, 400 new eyeballs is brilliant, because you just need a couple to convert and you're doing it. Great. I know we're coming to the end of this interview. So final question for you before I let you go is,
sure,
someone who is watching this and they want to get started with Pinterest, right? What's the best way to get up and running and maybe see some traffic coming in over the next couple of days, a week, or whatever?
Yeah. So then I'm really glad you asked in that way. So a couple of seeing traffic coming in the first couple of days is not going to happen, just so you know. So anyone who's watching that, it definitely takes a little bit of time for that to build up. But the best way to get started fast, I would say, is I actually created a quick start guide. So you can download that. It's literally a quick start Pinterest checklist, and it gives you the 5 steps to brand and visually brand and then optimize your profile on Pinterest. So that would be a really good way to get started. And you can actually grab that on my website. It's at 𝗕𝗲𝗁.com / Pinterest checklist, all one word, Pinterest checklist. And then if someone wants to dive a little deeper, if they're like, yeah, this is definitely for me, and I want to learn more from me, Jana, if you want to learn more from me, I do offer a free masterclass as well. And that's the 5 secrets for automating audience growth and getting clients using Pinterest. And that one is at 𝗕𝗲𝗁.com / free class. And I usually wouldn't offer 2 different paths, you know what I mean? But I think it's good for 2 different types of people. If you just want to do something quick, check out the checklist. But the masterclass is cool because it teaches you, you really have to approach Pinterest as a search engine because it's more like Google, right? And almost everybody who I know who's tried to approach it and not had success tried to approach it like social media. So my masterclass is very meaty. It teaches a lot of stuff. It's not just, I promise, it's not just one big sales pitch. There is a sales pitch at the end, but it does, it teaches you a lot first. It gives you the 5 things you need to know in order to understand how the fact that Pinterest is a search engine, what that even means and why, and translates that to what you need to do differently on Pinterest than you would if you were approaching it like social media. So that's 𝗕𝗲𝗁.com / free class. And that would be a good place to start too.
Awesome. That's probably the best answer you can give rather than rattle on with 10 things that people won't remember. I'm going to Jana to this video. So do check out her profile and you'll be able to find all of the links there. Anyway, if you learn anything about Pinterest and how to drive traffic and make some money. So Jana, thank you very much for your time.
Sure. Thank you for having me.